Okay, let's unpack this. We are embarking on a deep dive into one of the most foundational and, you could argue, confusing concepts in the work of John Wesley.
We are, specifically his Sermon 6, The Righteousness of Faith.
And our mission today is really just clarity. Wesley is using Romans chapter 10, verses 5 through 8 to show this unchangeable difference between two ways of approaching God.
Right. He calls them the righteousness of the law and the righteousness of faith.
And the key scripture, if you're following along, it involves Paul quoting Moses. So Moses describes the righteousness of the law by saying, "The man which doeth those things shall live by them." But then he also speaks of the righteousness of faith, saying the word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart.
And what's so fascinating is the immediate confusion Wesley had to clear up for his own listeners, which is still a problem for us today.
Which is?
Well, when Paul makes this comparison, most people just assume he's opposing the Old Testament law.
Yeah.
You know, the covenant from Moses to the New Testament covenant from Christ.
But Wesley says, hold on, that's actually wrong.
Completely wrong.
Paul is not pitting Moses against Christ.
Because Moses himself speaks the words of faith.
Right.
So Wesley isolates the real opposition here. It is between the covenant of works and the covenant of grace. And we should probably pause on those terms because they are absolutely central.
Please do. For a listener just trying to get a handle on this, how do we define the covenant of works? Is it basically God's original contract with humanity?
It is, yeah. Think of the covenant of works as the original deal offered to Adam in paradise. It's a perfect deal for an innocent being. The terms were absolute.
Okay.
Maintain perfect, unblemished obedience, and you will continue in holiness and happiness. It's a transaction based entirely on your performance.
And the covenant of grace, what's that?
That's the recovery plan. It's the agreement God established through Christ in all ages, even before and under the Jewish system, for fallen human beings.
So its terms are based not on our flawless performance,
but on belief.
Yeah. So this explains who Wesley is really targeting here. He's talking to people who have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. They're trying really, really hard.
Oh, they're trying, but they've fundamentally confused their contracts. They are, as he says, ignorant of God's righteousness.
They're trying to establish their own righteousness.
Exactly. They're trying to build a foundation of worthiness, a pile of good deeds before faith, so they feel like they're acceptable enough to even approach God.
It's like they're trying to polish themselves up before asking for the gift.
That's it exactly. And they miss the ultimate truth Paul delivers. Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. Christ put an end to that strict demand, do this and live.
And that very requirement, living by our own doing, is where we have to start. So what did the law actually demand?
Let's get into it. Wesley lays it out with terrifying precision. The condition which doeth those things shall live by them. It required an obedience that was, and this is his phrase, perfect in all its parts, entire and wanting nothing.
Okay, so when we say perfect, we don't just mean, not breaking the 10 Commandments. This is much, much deeper.
Far deeper. Wesley says it demands universal conformity.
And that means what?
It means it was twofold, inward and outward, negative and positive. So outwardly, sure, you abstain from every evil work, but inwardly, the law demands you keep every desire and every single thought in perfect obedience to God's will.
Wow. So we're talking about total purity of heart, avoiding every single idle word. It's like this internal surveillance system where anything less than 100% compliance is total failure.
That's not even the whole story. That leads to the second crucial demand, the intensity requirement. It's not enough to just do the right things. Your obedience must be perfect in degree.
Perfect in degree. What does that look like in practice?
It means loving God with the full capacity of your soul, serving the Lord with all your strength. Imagine trying to run a marathon where it's not enough to finish. You have to run every single step with maximum 100% effort and focus.
With no distraction or fatigue.
None. The law allows for no abatement, no falling short in any degree for even a second.
That is just an unreachable bar for anyone who's ever existed, and that's before we even talk about human fallenness. But Wesley says there's a third element that really seals the deal on this.
Right, the demand for uninterrupted obedience. The holiness had to be perfectly continuous from the moment you began until the end of the trial, with no lapse, no intermission, no moment of imperfection.
So if Adam had failed 1 millisecond before his trial was over, the whole thing would be void.
The entire contract, voided, absolutely. One single breach utterly destroys the whole claim. The law's final word is just uncompromising. This do, and thou shalt live. If you're already perfect, here's how you stay perfect.
But if you've sinned, even once.
That path is instantly and permanently shut.
So if the law is this terrifyingly high, unreachable mountain, how does Wesley then describe the path of faith as something so close, something nigh thee?
Well, this is where that Romans 10 passage becomes such a profound message of relief. Paul tells us, "Say not in thine heart, who shall ascend into heaven, or who shall descend into the deep."
So what is that imagery actually referring to, ascending, descending? It sounds like some kind of epic quest.
It's a metaphor for impossible, self-initiated effort. Ascending into heaven meant, metaphorically, bringing Christ down to do some great act for you. Descending meant bringing him up from the dead.
Okay, so God isn't requiring some impossible Herculean labor before we can gain acceptance.
Not at all. The law demanded we bring perfection down from heaven. Grace says, stop trying to climb. The condition for life is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. It's right here. It's accessible. This, Paul says, is the word of faith which we preach.
So if we connect that accessibility to the bigger picture of the covenant of grace, what does it actually offer?
It offers justification and salvation, specifically to the fallen man through Christ. The law was for the innocent. The covenant of grace was revealed progressively to Adam after the fall, to Abraham, and on through the prophets.
And the most crucial aspect has to be that it no longer requires unsinning obedience.
The core requirement shifts completely.
Yeah.
The covenant of grace does not require us to do anything absolutely necessary for our justification. It requires only to believe in him who justifieth the ungodly that worketh not.
That phrase, justifieth the ungodly that worketh not, is just so radical. It seems to actively shut the door on our works being a prerequisite.
It does. It fundamentally reverses the whole process. We see it with Abraham, right? His faith was counted to him for righteousness. Faith shall stand in the stead of perfect obedience.
It's an exchange. Our belief is accepted in place of the perfect performance the law demanded. The promise is just so direct. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and thou shalt be saved.
Saved from guilt, saved from wrath, and quickened from the death of sin to the life of righteousness. The moment you believe, you gain acceptance, and then you gain the power to live righteously. It just flips the entire order of operations.
This sets up the critical comparison. We have to, stop just listing points and really talk about the implications. What is the essential, unchangeable difference between these two covenants? It feels like the main difference isn't the rules, but who the covenant is for.
That's a perfect place to start. The law supposes the person is already holy and happy, made in God's image. It just prescribes how to continue in that state. It only knows how to deal with the innocent.
But grace, on the other hand, it assumes the person is unholy and unhappy.
Right, they've fallen short. They're under God's wrath. Grace prescribes a condition for recovery. The law is a maintenance manual. Grace is a restoration plan.
Then you have the condition itself. This is the transactional divide.
Yes. The law required perfect, uninterrupted obedience to every single detail. You break it, you die.
And grace.
Grace requires only faith, living faith, in the one who justifies. It's an act of trust, not performance. Which brings us to the price.
The law required Adam to pay the price himself through flawless obedience.
In the covenant of grace, we admit we have nothing to pay. We're bankrupt. God frankly forgives us all, provided only that we believe in him who hath paid the price for us. It moves from self-payment to an accepted payment.
When you lay it out like that, the implications are just. They're massive. And this contrast lets Wesley describe trying to cling to the law as the foolishness of folly. Why is it so foolish for a fallen person to do this?
Well, the mistake is structural. The person doing assumes they're still in that state of innocence the covenant of works was made for. They forget the law was never designed for the recovery of favor once it's been lost.
Only for its continuance.
Right. It's like using a recipe for baking bread to try and fix a car engine. They are fundamentally mismatched tools for the job.
And Wesley doesn't pull any punches describing the state of fallen man. He calls us shapen in wickedness and a mere lump of ungodliness, if that's the material you're starting with.
Then seeking acceptance by works is just utter stupidity. It's the height of irrationality. Since one single breach, and we've all committed thousands, destroys the whole claim, the only thing left for that person is a fearful looking for of fiery indignation. The law knows only justice. It says, I know not to show mercy.
So if that's the folly, then wisdom has to be submitting to the righteousness of faith. How does Wesley define that wisdom?
It's true wisdom because it is, and I love this phrase, acting according to truth to the real nature of things. It's just understanding reality.
And what is that reality?
The reality is we have a corrupt, sinful nature. We have no righteousness of our own.
Yeah.
We deserve wrath.
So it's basically intellectual honesty, realizing we're not good enough and have zero merit to bring to the table.
Yes. And the wisdom is in just acquiescing in the method of reconciliation that God himself chose. It's not because we are worthy, but because it is of his mere grace of free love. It's accepting that God has chosen to forgive the one who trusts him.
And this path aims at the best end recovery by the only means given, believing in Jesus Christ.
It shifts the entire focus from our feeble attempts to perform to God's power to save.
This brings us to the immediate, really powerful application. Wesley directs his final counsel right to you, the listener, whosoever thou art who desire to be forgiven. And he warns against all the subtle ways we still try to establish our own righteousness.
Yes, he details the continuing folly, what not to say. And this list is so important because it just reveals how persistent that covenant of works mentality is in all of us.
Okay, so what are the big red flags?
The first one, do not say I must first do this or I must first conquer every sin. Or even the really pious sounding ones like I must first go to church, receive the Lord's Supper, hear more sermons.
But wait, why would going to church or conquering a sin be the wrong thing to say first? Aren't those things good?
They're necessary consequences of faith, but they can never be the condition for acceptance. If you say, I must first conquer this sin, you're subtly trying to build up a little bit of righteousness to make yourself worthy of being forgiven.
You're trying to climb that impossible ladder of the law, even just one rung, before you'll accept grace.
You are. You're turning a benefit of salvation into a prerequisite for it. It's a fundamental error. And Wesley also addresses the emotional side of it. He says, do not say, I cannot be accepted yet because I'm not good enough.
Which is what everyone feels.
Everyone feels it. But Wesley states flatly that there dwells in you no good thing, and you will never be good enough until you believe in Jesus. In fact, he argues, you'll find yourself getting worse and worse, not better, the longer you wait.
So the very lack of worthiness we feel is the reason we have to come now, not the reason we should wait.
That's the core realization. So the only necessary first step is immediate. First, believe. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. And he warns against that common tendency to delay belief while you wait for a better emotional state.
That's a huge psychological hurdle, isn't it? People feel they need to earn their sorrow or earn their sincerity first.
They do. But Wesley says, don't wait for more contrition. God may very well make you contrite, but not before thou believest, but by believing. You look unto Jesus, and that act of trust is what breaks the hard heart, not your own self-effort and sorrow.
The urgency is palpable.
It is. He says, all things are now ready. Now is the time to wash thee white in the blood of the Lamb. This is a forceful, immediate call to action, not some delayed preparation.
And the final stark instruction here is unforgettable. It's for those who do try to bring some self-effort to the table. Wesley insists that whatever good works or sincerity you have before, forgiveness, all of it, must be cast behind thy back, trampled underfoot, made no account of.
Because until you completely discard the idea of your own merit, you can't approach God as a mere sinner, guilty, lost, undone, pleading only the merits of his Son. That self-effort, even if it looks like sincerity, it has to be thrown away for faith to actually take root.
It has to be all or nothing. If you bring one little grain of your own goodness, you've just put yourself right back under the covenant of works, which demands the whole thing.
That's the choice. The law demands perfection for continuance. Grace demands belief for recovery. The word of faith is nigh unto you. It's not far off like the impossible perfection of the law. The message is simple. Believe the gospel, and I will be merciful unto thy unrighteousness, and thy iniquities will I remember no more.
It's the beautiful, radical nature of the covenant of grace.
It truly is.
You know, what really stands out to me is how Wesley argues that even trying to gather enough sincerity or contrition before coming to Christ is just a subtle way of substituting self-effort for grace.
It is. It's that human desire to bring something to the table, anything, to prove we deserve the help.
We want to feel like we contributed to our own rescue. So if even our own feelings of unworthiness can become obstacles to receiving favor, where else in life do we try to build up an insufficient own righteousness? socially, professionally, emotionally, before we allow ourselves to accept a necessary gift or help.
That's a fascinating application. You see it every day. People refuse career opportunities because they don't feel ready yet, or they won't accept friendship until they fix their own issues first.
Exactly. What does it truly mean to come to a hard problem or a necessary step just as thou art without that prerequisite of having earned the right to even start? That idea, the rejection of self-merit for the sake of starting the journey, is something to think about long after this deep dive ends.